This is Mac OS Ken.
Talk of a new Apple Watch Ultra. Russia's banning iPhones again. And troubling talk around Arizona's TSMC plant. It is Monday, the 17th of July, 2023. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken. Brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Use code MacOSKen50 at factormeals.com/MacOSKen50 for 50% off. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/MacOSKen. A story about how that actually leads to more of a On Friday, on Medium, TF International analyst Ming-Chi said, Apple is working on 3D printing some of the titanium parts for this fall's Apple Watch Ultra update. A piece on the post from MacRumors said the components could include the digital crown, side button, and action button, as these are the only mechanical parts of the Apple Watch Ultra. While said parts will still have to go through some machining before they're ready for assembly, Ming-Chi says it can still improve the production time and reduce the production cost. The how, of course, is the 3D printing. As for the rest, we're getting a new Apple Watch Ultra this year? Until now, the MacRumors piece points out, only Bloomberg's Mark Gurman had said that Apple would release a second-generation Apple Watch Ultra alongside the Apple Watch Series 9 models later this year. MacRumors says with both Gurman and the TF International analyst expecting an Apple Watch Ultra update this fall, 1 year after the introduction of the device, the idea of an annual update cycle moves from possible to more likely. Well, it's official. I cannot keep up with what's happening with Apple and Russia these days. I know that Russia's FSB, the organization that pretty much picked up where the KGB left off after the fall of the Soviet Union, says it does not trust Apple tech and wants government agencies to stop using it. But past that, well, I'm not going to say I give up, but I can't keep up. How far back do we go? In March of 2022, a piece from Apple Insider pointed out last week, Apple halted all sales through its online storefront in Russia after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Pointing that out a year and a half later was tied to a story that had people in Russia complaining that they could no longer download, subscribe to, or even try out Logic Pro and Final Cut Pro for iPad. As upsetting as that might be for some people, it's hardly a job for the FSB. In March of this year, a comical-sounding piece from Reuters had Russia telling government officials not to use iPhones because of concerns that the devices are vulnerable to Western intelligence agencies. The report, which seemed to have some officials using the words iPhone and smartphone interchangeably, said the ban was set to go into effect on the 1st of April. No foolin'. Or maybe some foolin'. Around the 1st of June, 2 months after the iPhone smartphone ban for government officials was supposed to happen, Russia issued statements saying that Apple was helping the U.S. spy on thousands of iPhone users. Apple Insider had the country indicating that the U.S. National Security Agency has been spying on Russian officials and civilians using iPhone backdoor vulnerabilities created for the U.S. by Apple. But those officials weren't supposed to be using iPhones anymore, were they? Also, Apple called it bunk. Around the time of Russia's assertion, 9to5Mac had a short statement from the Cupertino company saying, "We have never worked with any government to insert a backdoor into any Apple product, and never will." Well, Russia will show them by banning the use of iPhone by government officials. Again. Over the weekend, the Financial Times ran a piece under the headline, "Thousands of Russian officials to give up iPhones over U.S. spying fears." It's It's not just iPhone this time, though. According to the report, Russian authorities have banned thousands of officials and state employees from using iPhones and other Apple products as a crackdown against the American tech company intensifies over espionage concerns. Russia's Trade Ministry, its Digital Development Ministry, and the state-owned defense conglomerate Rostec are all expected to follow suit today. Similar bans are thought to be in place or on the way for the Finance Ministry, the Energy Ministry, and other official bodies. The Financial Times says the ban on iPhones, iPad tablets, and other Apple devices at leading ministries and institutions reflects growing concern in the Kremlin and the Federal Security Service spy agency over a surge in espionage activity by U.S. intelligence agencies against Russian state institutions. One unnamed official, and who can blame them really? One unnamed official says security officials in ministries, these are FSB employees who hold civilian positions such as deputy ministers, announced that iPhones were no longer considered safe and that alternatives should be sought. Well, maybe you're thinking, haven't we heard this before? Yeah, like a minute ago. The problem is people love their iPhones and hate the Russian alternatives. Apparently even Russian officials. The report has Russian cybersecurity vet Alexei Lukatsky casting doubt on whether this ban will be any more effective than the last. There were restrictions on the use of work email on devices not certified by security service before, says Lukatsky, but most officials did not comply. The question is whether they will comply now. Now, if you will forgive me a moment or two of editorial, what if this is a problem of Russia's own creation? I don't mean they're making up all the espionage. I'm saying, what if this is a problem they caused? Back in March of 2021, Apple Insider ran a piece saying that Apple had capitulated to Russian law requiring pre-installed software on iPhone and the Mac. That piece said, under the agreement, iPhones and iPads activated from the 1st of April 2021 onward will present a new screen to users, offering a selection of applications produced by Russian developers. Users will be able to select which apps they will allow or refuse to be installed via this screen as part of the setup process. While Apple indicated that the apps would be checked for compliance with Apple's privacy, security, and content standards, Apple is being forced to include software that it didn't want to include. Is it possible that that software and its inclusion, over which Apple has no control, have introduced a vulnerability or vulnerabilities being exploited by who knows who? It's also possible that Russia is lying. And okay, it's also possible that Apple is lying. It's also possible that Russia is lying. Anyway, Russia is banning the use of Apple hardware by government officials. I look forward to doing this story again in a couple of months. Some seriously troubling talk around TSMC's under-construction chip plant in Arizona. Pieces from 9 to 5 Mac and Apple Insider have workers at the site calling conditions exceptionally dangerous. There's even talk of a couple of unreported fatalities. The Apple Insider piece highlights a report from the American Prospect's Lee Harris. While the Biden administration had said that the TSMC fab would be built with union labor, Lee's visit to the site suggested otherwise. According to her report, many on-site are international migrants and out-of-state workers. The parking lot is full of Texas and Louisiana license plates. It's not that there's no union representation. Luke Casper of the Smart Sheet Metal Workers Union told Harris, "It's easily the most unsafe site I've ever walked on. I've been in the trades 17 years. Everyone that works at the hall and out there on site agrees that it's by far the most dangerous, unorganized job site they saw." As for the alleged deaths, Apple Insider says multiple sources told Harris of one incident with a non-union worker that ended in loss of life. The other was said to be a drug overdose that happened on site. Since it's not tied to work safety, one might leave that death out of the report. except for the part where it wasn't officially reported. In fact, Phoenix, Arizona public radio station KJZZ followed up on Harris's report with TSMC. That follow-up had TSMC saying, "In Phoenix, there have been 0 work-related fatalities since the groundbreaking in 2011. While Arizona officials say they've received no report of TSMC employees at the site suffering death, hospitalization, amputation, or loss of an eye, which they are legally required to track, most of the people on the site don't work for TSMC. According to Harris, most of the roughly 12,000 workers building the fab do not list TSMC as an employer. According to sources at the site, hundreds of different contractors have hired for specific jobs and specialties. When it comes to injury, or worse, Harris says reports would be filed with the hundreds of individual contractors on the job site. That complex reporting structure can make it hard to confirm injuries, particularly when they involve migrant workers. I will say Harris's entire report is interesting, frustrating, and harrowing in parts. Definitely worth a read. You can find the article, "Chipmakers Scramble to Build, Marred by Mistakes and Injuries," at the American Prospect site, prospect.org. More news in a moment, but first a word from Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit and sponsor of today's show. Summer is well underway. Longer days mean more time to do stuff, not more time in the kitchen, especially with Factor. I have loved the Factor meals that I've had. Fantastic proteins, fantastic sauces, fantastic sides, and all ready in a snap. Just 10 minutes in the oven or 2 minutes in the microwave lets you fuel up fast. Here's the thing, though. Speed and convenience don't trump quality and nutrition. From Calorie Smart to Keto to Protein Plus to Vegan Plus Veggie, Factor's meals are prepared by chefs, approved by dietitians, and delivered to your door, ready for the oven. Their meals are fresh, never frozen. That's how Factor is ready so fast while tasting so good. It's like takeout without the wait. And it costs less. See what Factor has for you. Head to factormeals.com/MacOSKen50 and use code MacOSKen50 to get 50% off. That's MacOSKen50 at factormeals.com/MacOSKen50 to get 50% off. Taste what has made Factor America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Use code MacOSKen50 for 50% off at factormeals.com/MacOSKen50. Apple TV may be chasing another football league. Apple Insider says the Cupertino streamer has been in talk with Germany's Bundesliga about carrying the European Soccer League. Currently in a deal with ESPN, a tie-up with Apple would see it offering Bundesliga starting around the 2026-2027 football season. It's currently in a deal with ESPN for the U.S. The piece says a streaming-only deal for Bundesliga in Canada also ends with the conclusion of the 2025-2026 season, and so do an unspecified number of other worldwide deals, according to the report. The prospect is really interesting. Apple has shown, or is showing, it can do worldwide delivery with its MLS offering. Apple Insider says Apple tends to want worldwide rights to everything it acquires, so it's possible that Apple TV Plus may bring German football to a global audience. And doesn't that sound like the kind of thing German football might like? Then again, the soccer league may be able to get more money with a bigger number of smaller deals. So far, talks are said to be preliminary. Neither outfit has offered comment to this point. Hints of an interesting sports offering for Apple Vision Pro. Thin hints, vague hints, and yet hints that are not hard to believe. The New York Post, yeah, I know, but still. The New York Post says NBA Commissioner Adam Silver on Thursday said the league is working with Apple to bring a tech-enhanced viewing experience to Apple's $3,500 Vision Pro virtual reality headset. What that means exactly is unclear. Asked by the Post last week at the annual Allen & Company Sun Valley Conference what the NBA had planned for Apple's headset, Silver said simply, "We're working very closely with Apple." Even if he'd wanted to say what that meant, he apparently could not. The event has rules against public discussion of private discussions. Instead, Silver said, "Just in a general way, I've been having lots of conversations with media companies and tech companies. It seems like the interest in premium live sports remains incredibly strong. I think they're looking at ways that they can find new opportunities to distribute these sports rights in broader ways than they previously, and in unique and different ways, particularly around the personalization and customization that can come with a lot of the advanced technology." Will NBA on Apple Vision Pro be a day one offering? It's possible. Right now, the NBA has media rights deals with Disney's ESPN and Warner Bros. Discovery's Turner Sports that run through the 2024-25 season. That would seem to mean no AR, VR, MR games for Apple for the first year or so. Then again, Disney is all in on the Apple Vision, and they own ESPN, so maybe. Hey, Apple, first do hockey. Actually, they'll probably do soccer first. If you want to add a special touch to your next Apple gift, you'll apparently have to add it yourself. MacRumors says the Cupertino company has removed the gift wrap option from its online store. According to the report, the gift wrapping consisted of a signature white box with a red ribbon, along with a greeting card that could include a personal message. Usually a paid option, it was free with some special promotions in Australia, Canada, Germany, New Zealand, Singapore, the UK, and the US, as well as select other countries. Now the piece says mentions of gift wrapping have been removed from Apple's site. And finally today, talk about your ugly duckling. Remember the story a few weeks ago that had an auction house auctioning off an unopened original 4GB iPhone? The outfit handling the sale, LCG Auctions, expected the device to go for as much as $100,000. It's not because that was a particularly sought-after model when it went on sale. Quite the contrary. A few months after iPhone's initial release, Apple did away with the 4GB model and added a 16GB version to the higher end. When LCG announced the auction, there had already been a few 8GB unopened original iPhones auctioned off this year. The top seller went for about $63,000. And yet two things made LCG think its 4GB phone could go for more. First was the fact that that particular model sold originally for such a short period of time, which led to the second factor: there were likely fewer unopened 4GB models out there to be sold. And LCG seems to have been correct. A piece from 9 to 5 Mac says the auction ended this weekend after starting the auction with an estimated value of up to $100,000. The piece says the 4GB model blew past the world record. The phone ended up selling for $158,000. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and sponsored by Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Use code MacOSKen50 at factormeals.com/MacOSKen50 for 50% off. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/MacOSKen. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com, You can reach me a couple of ways. info@macosken.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.